Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at a few stocks that I believe have some upside in the long term. These are long bets. Again, this is not financial advice, but I want to bring you this and I want to talk to you about why I like these companies. Let's start off with the first one here. It is a biotechnology company. The ticker symbol is SANA. And if you want to read a little bit about it, go ahead and read it right here. They're based out of Seattle, Washington. And to make a very long story short here, they basically engage in research and development of engineered cells for medicine. And I like the performance so far. Let's take a look at this year to date. Year to date, it's 225.13%. Pretty impressive to see a stock go up that much. But here's the thing that I'm noticing. If we look at the 1 year, it's still not too bad at 25%. At the 5 year, we're at 84.86%. And then we can see actually when this thing got listed on the stock market here back on February 4th, 2021. So if you do some research on the specific company, it does show promise. Here is some of the news regarding some of this and why it's actually paying attention to, the markets and like people are actually caring about this. Actually has a 100% buy rating. And the reason for that here is we can actually see the earnings continue to go up. So they are becoming profitable. And I like to see that. We will see where, they actually report earnings here on November 7th. Of course, it's going to be in the pre-market. So we'll see how that goes. But this is one company that I would go ahead and add to your watch list. Remember, this is not financial advice. I just want to go ahead and bring this all to you to see, some upside potentially with these companies. And of course, the ticker symbol is SANA. Let's move on to the next stock right now. So my next stock here is an interesting name. It's CCCX, and we can see it's the Churchill Capital Corp X Class A. So we can go ahead and read a little bit about what this business does. They actually handle, the stock, capital, and exchange and asset acquisitions. So stock purchases, reorganization for smaller businesses, and they bring it into one or more businesses. You can go ahead and just read that for yourself. Of course, we can see they are headquartered in New York, New York. They were founded in 2014, so they are a fairly new company. And it's interesting that they only have 2 employees, which is incorrect from my understanding. It's nice to see at least they have something listed there. This hasn't been around too long. There's actually not too much profitability on this specific company from my understanding. But we can do some research in another video on that. But here is the thing that I'm noticing. It is extremely volatile. So we can see it got listed back here on July 7th, 2025. And we can see that actually really didn't do much the majority of July and August, not until we started to get into September. And then it really spiked here on October 13th, 2025. We can see for 147.61%. And then we kind of have come down because, we've had some red days here in the market. But needless to say, this is a stock that I am watching closely. I think it long term, it's very promising. Again, do your own research, not financial advice. Let's move on to the next stock right now. My next stock here is by the ticker symbol DEFT. This is actually based out of Toronto, Ontario. And what's interesting about this specific company is they actually deal with securities. So very similar to the other company we were just talking about, but it does with private companies and other entities. And the reason I'm actually picking this is because I was actually seeing a lot of chatter about this on X. We can actually see the performance has been pretty terrible since this thing got listed back on May 12th, 2025. But overall, the company does seem like it's a good run company. We can actually come down here to the very bottom and we can actually see how many people have been buying this. We can see where this was, and we can also see some of their earnings. It's very sporadic. So I would actually look to somewhere else for this. And the reason I'm using Robinhood is just because it's the easiest to visualize. I like to show you all the percentages. And let me know if you want something different like Webull or Moomoo or something else, but I prefer using Robinhood. It's just easy to read for everyone, but let me know down in the comments below. So I like this company overall. I think it's an interesting company to watch. Again, add it to your watch list, not financial advice. I haven't opened a position in any of these, as you can see. These are just stocks that I am watching very closely. I wanted to bring it to you all. Let's move on to the next stock right now. So my next stock here, I actually do own a position. The ticker symbol is IREN. And here is why we are going with this long term. So if we are unfamiliar with what this company is, you can go ahead and just read it right down here. But basically, in a nutshell, it is the future of Bitcoin and AI and renewable energy. That is massive because we are moving into a crypto forward economy. And of course, Bitcoin is at the center of a lot of these things. And of course, AI is going to be the driving factor. But what is impressive to see is the performance on this thing. We can see year to date, it is at 470.32%. That is just amazing to see that. And I cannot believe that actually is happening that quickly. We can actually see even during this downfall, right? We were up almost close to 600% on the year. So a little bit of a pullback, but that's okay. We can see my average price here. Of course, I like to be transparent again with you all, and we can see my total return and when I actually bought these. So we can actually scroll to the very bottom here and actually see what the platform is doing, like Robinhood, of course. We can see hedge funds, and then we can see insiders, but let's leave it on Robinhood. And of course, here is the analysis on it. It is a 76.9% buy. And of course, we have some holds and some sells right there. And we can see profitability has been doing good. And of course, we can see when I bought this down there on the history of a limited market buy, 3.665051 shares. And of course, I bought it for $47.75. and has appreciated quite nicely. But this is a company that I am watching very closely. Again, not financial advice, do your own research, but it's something I like. And let's move on to the next stock right now. My next stock here is on the ticker symbol NBIS. And the reason I am liking this company, it's again, very similar to the previous one, right? It's AI focused. We can actually go ahead and stop the video if you want and read that right there. But basically they're handling GPU clusters. So development tools, we're accelerating AI. And you know, this is the foundation that we're going to need for the country. And of course, I do have a position in this. We can see when I bought this, my average cost was $50.94. I own 6 shares, and we can see my total return right there, 134.65%. So quite staggering of a return so far. And we can see year to date, that's where it's impressive at 324.88%. And of course, we had a weak pullback. But again, at the high points, we were almost nearing 400% return for year to date, which is just amazing. And if we look at max time frame, we can see it kind of changes. And if you remember my other video, we actually talked about this space gap here. If you want to hear more about it or learn more about it, just go ahead and look it up on ChatGPT or Google that, because it's an interesting reason why that actually doesn't show right there. Of course, we can go ahead and read this. This is actually not based out of America. It's actually based out of Holland, Amsterdam. The company was founded in 2004. Of course, we can scroll down to the bottom, we can see some of the news. Of course, we can see the trends, what Robinhood has been doing, and of course, hedge funds as well. I always like to look at the analysis rating, so we can see it's an 83.3% rating. And of course, the earnings have been quite staggering here. So the earnings have continued to be consistent. Now we'll see where we go, right? Because we're actually going into not profitability, which is just a little concerning, but it's been staggering to see that they have continued to be basically consistent since, you know, Q4 of 2024, but we will see if that can continue long term. And of course, this is not financial advice, but I like this company long term. I think it is an excellent performing stock. Do your research and let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let's move on to the next stock right now. So my next stock slash ETF, you know, however you want to look at this, it is an ETF. But the point is that this is actually, I'm using my free amount of margin here. So I'm actually a Robinhood Gold member. It's $5 a month. It's great. And what I actually did was I used that $1,000 free worth of interest to go ahead and put into BLOX. And let me just repeat that. It's BLOX. That is the ticker symbol. It's a crypto income ETF. Here is how I am using it. So this pays actually weekly, and we can actually come down here to the very bottom and see what I'm getting paid. Let's actually blow this up here for you guys. So I was playing around with this fund earlier on, right? I bought 7 shares. We can see exactly when I added more money to this, and we can see how I am just reinvesting that amount. And of course, this is going to snowball as I continue to grow this amount. Make a long story short, this amount could go to, I would say, almost about $80,000 in about 20 years. Again, that's rough math, and we'll see if that happens long term. Let's jump back onto that fund right now. So we can scroll up here and we can actually see, you know, just the performance of this fund. But what's interesting about this particular fund is the exposure that it has to so many different assets, right? It has Ethereum, it has Bitcoin, it has BMBR, if I remember correctly, Bitmine, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And of course, just crypto exposure in general. You know, year to date, it hasn't been around that long, but it's already up 32.02%. And it hasn't been around, you know, basically not even 6 months, right? So it's July 17th, 2025, and it got listed at $19.36. We're at $25.56. You know, we actually climbed pretty high up here on October 9th, 2025 to $27.56. We can see the amounts, you know, it hasn't really been changing very much. We can also see the inception day here, right? And we can also see the number of holdings. It's unfortunate that they don't actually show what they hold, but this is something that I liked, using that free $1,000. You know, we can use that $1,000 anywhere, but I want to use it here to go ahead and build a position at BLOX. Again, not financial advice, do your own research, but that's what I'm doing with my free $1,000, of course, from Robinhood. Let's move on to the next stock right now. So my last stock here is ASTS. That is the ticker symbol. And the reason I'm picking this is because it is a broadband cellular network built in space. And I actually sold out of this position because I wanted to open a position in something else. And I kind of regret selling that, and I'll explain to you all in just a moment. Let's look at this year-to-date performance. It's at 311.16%. That is, again, very impressive for a company that is not profitable. They haven't been around that long. 2017, they're based out of Midland, Texas, which is not a very big city. But hey, it's awesome to see a company like this innovating, and I like to see it. So let's scroll down to the very bottom here. All right, I just want to show you all this. So here is what actually happened, right? We can see the profitability is not very good. We can actually look at the history down here. Look at this right here, right? So I actually bought some shares and then I sold the shares just for a little because I wanted to move that money out. But if I would have kept these shares, right, we hit about $100 a share earlier today. This position would have been worth about $1,000, and I regret selling that, but it's okay. Live and learn. But here's the concerning part, right? This company is still not yet profitable. We are still losing money, and we can see the ratings of this particular stock. 54% out of 13 ratings, and we only have a 53.8% buy on this. And we can see a 30.8% hold. But overall in this company, I would say that I like it. I think it's very promising. I think because it hasn't been around that long, and we can see it actually got listed on November 1st, 2019. It actually didn't do much, right? It was as cheap right here as $2.21 just a year ago. And now we are nearing $100 a share, which is just staggering to see. Overall, I think those are some interesting stocks to keep your eyes on. Let me know if you have any more questions or want to take a deep dive and really understand some of these companies, because I'm putting this together for all of you because I'm interested in these companies as well. As always, thanks for supporting the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.